360. 360. Комната 360.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going live right now in our very first episode of Room 360 in English. And right here, right now, I have in front of me sitting a second-year master student from Ural Federal University. Came all the way from Brazil, Igor Adami. His name is Igor. Yeah, hello, Igor.
Hello, man.
Igor coming with vigor. Yeah, second time the joke. Yeah, never gets old. How are you?
Oh, it's all good, man. It's sunny day.
Yeah, you got
it's rather cold.
rather cold.
Yeah.
You got English classes coming.
Yeah, I've got English classes coming.
Yeah, we gotta be quick with this thing.
We are gonna be quick, yeah.
Yeah.
There's not too much to say about me.
Oh, you're so shy and modest. It's a pretty thing. Yeah, tell us please about your general life, how you got here, how did you end up in Russia, how you decided basically coming here and taking all your things and packages here.
Well, that is actually a pretty simple story. Somewhere in my bachelor's, I was doing a choice module about general security studies, and I got sort of interested in that, and I started looking for master programs that were, let's say, reachable to a person of my humble achievements, let's say it like that. And I was actually, I passed the selection for a university in Canada. It wasn't necessarily a good university, nothing that you would know. I don't even remember the name.
Okay.
So it's certainly not a meaningful choice.
Certainly, yeah.
Still, and then I had that other choice to come to Russia, and it all boiled down to what was the cheapest and what I could rely on my parents to be the more the long-term choice. So for the longevity of my economic support,
To be less of a burden for your parents.
and to be less of a burden for them, and also like to increase my freedom to maybe change my choices whether something goes wrong and stuff like that. I chose Russia also because it was still cheaper than Brazil, given the shortage of scholarships that Brazil has, and the cost of living there is still a bit higher than in Russia. So it was even cheaper for me to come here and 13,000 kilometers away from my parents study here than actually live there in the same city with them.
Yeah.
So that's sort of like the foundational decision making.
Okay.
Of coming to Russia.
No, that's beautiful because not a lot of folks are actually coming here predeterminedly. You know, like they decided. I know the other guy from Canada, but he's a freak. He's a total freak. You know, on Russia. He likes Russian languages, Russian women, and Russian history. I don't know. Yeah, and please, could you highlight about your general understanding of the things here? How are you actually looking at things? Is it the other thing in Russia, or how different the Russia is from Brazil, not in terms of weather? Weather we understand,
of course.
Yeah, the climate is different, but the people.
All right.
Yeah, or
I see.
some I don't know habits here.
Okay. All right. So like the first differences, I would say that like in Brazil, people are generally just open from the start. They all sort of consider you as a brother from another mother. And that sort of works in general. People come to you and address to you in a not necessarily respectable manner. And you can expect that you can do that as well, and you don't find any big problems. There are many, I would say, like there is actually an absence of ritual between people. Like ritual, I mean social rituals and like the number of barriers that we usually have to address with people with respect and some like cordiality. Instead of just that usual friend slap on the back and sup bro and stuff like that. So that is like a starking difference where usually you are received in certain establishments. In Brazil, it's usually that well, it's already expected big dirty smile, you know.
Oh God!
In Russia, sometimes it's rather awkward because I enter places and I'm sort of smiling, but then I remember that I shouldn't.
Yeah, Russians are more constrained, yeah, of course, than Brazilians.
But then some similarities is that, well, it ends up that after you sort of break that cold barrier, it just becomes the same. Like you do develop, if that is a thing, heartful friendships, and I would say that people here are people that you can probably deposit more of your trust than you would otherwise in Brazil because of this. There's a clear difference between who is your friend and who is not, and there in Brazil everything sort of becomes opaque.
What was your program you were on your bachelor's back in Brazil?
What do you mean? It was.
I mean the program, the faculty you studied at.
Just international relations.
Also, yeah. So, and you decided to go full throttle to Russia because you wanted to go Russian studies, or just because they here they had cool programs as well, just independently.
Well, like my choice of coming to Russia was mostly because of the economical factors, let's say, like this.
Okay.
But also, like my choice of my choice of searching for a scholarship in Russia was sort of driven by the directions that my bachelor work took. In the end, I decided to study Russia. And like make sort of a comparative analysis between Russian political elites and Brazilian political elites, and I sort of grew interested. And what I could say is that where people around me, they had a number of stereotypes about Russia and like that usual skepticism, and that for me had already been dismantled beforehand, and I arrived to Russia knowing what I would see because I had already read about it a lot.
Yeah.
You know, and so that was first, and then like how to say that, like that security thing is more about that subject that I studied back in Brazil, and I decided that, well, if I'm going to study security, it might be from like the vantage point of a country that actually really matters when you talk to about matters of international security, right? And that was also it. Like Russia is big and powerful and this and that.
Okay, so back then you were studying also security issues in the world. So you were deep into the security studies, right?
I wouldn't say
you
deep.
wouldn't say, but you were interested. Okay,
yeah, for sure.
So and when you moved here, your first months here, you thought what? You thought you're gonna because you had to choose the topic of your research because the research are obligatory here on the graduate studies, and you picked a research. Let's say, what's your next step? What you are doing? Because the seminars class is starting, and what you're now feeling.
Well, actually, when I first arrived in November of 2016, I wasn't really too worried about choosing my research project theme because I was supposed to have 1 year of Russian probation.
Yeah,
but it didn't turn out to be 1 year. I arrived too late because of a delay on the invitation letter. So I got the visa late, got to Russia late, and I had 7 months of Russian class overall. And that didn't really leave me with Russian enough to actually, be like an autonomous student and actually make a difference. I was still being carried about the fact that I'm a foreign student and things are much lighter for me than they would be otherwise. But when time came that I had to choose, I had already grown, I would say, mature in my readings, and I was sort of decided that I would study anything that could be linked between just global security and discourse.
Okay.
So I really took an interest into that discourse thing, and that's it.
Yeah, but the last thing I would like to outline about your life as a student here, because you understand, of course, because we don't have like classes in English mostly. We have we do have like English for, I don't know, for some professional purposes, being studied. But all the seminars, all the classes here are going on the lectures as well, are going in Russian. What are you doing at lectures, for example, or at seminars?
Yeah, well, like, like there's the short and long version to that answer, and well, the short one is that I'm carried through and through by my colleagues. Like, they lift all the heavy weight, and I just sort of like show up there in the side, the very corner of the picture.
Thanks, guys.
That's the short answer. Yeah, thanks for the grade. And the longest answer is, well, it would be that I'm actually doing things and I'm trying to actively participate, just that I do it with lesser effectivity. So like, although I try to search for information I search for information in Russian, and I try to discuss some ideas, but it all sort of slowed down because I have to translate it and then sort of think about how I can push it among my colleagues, and it ends up not being a very good thing, especially in seminars where people start debating and voices they raise louder and louder, and I can't keep up. I can't even understand where the debate is. And whenever like it happened just once that I raised my hand that I wanted to talk, as you can expect, everybody was silent. And like, okay, let's give the boy some floor, you know, and
Okay.
It just didn't work out. Like, it's an interesting experience, but it's very intimidating to participate in, especially because all my colleagues they're Russians. Like, there is no other foreigner to like sort of group with me and stuff. I'm sort of alone in my group, and it just turned out to be like that. Yeah.
So the Russian speakers, better safe to say that, or just Russians. Yeah. Was it ever a time when they switched to English?
Well,
for the sake of you.
Well, actually, there were times, many times, I would say, that I was allowed to do a presentation in English. Just because this is actually a topic of interest, and maybe the subject of the presentation was actually part of the syllabus, and we were supposed to all be aware of it, so that we could like reach the end of the semester and like be able to say that like this is a subject that we have been through. And if I was forced to do the presentation in Russian, I can do it. I can just stand there and read the text in Russian. As painful it is going to be to listen, like been there, done that.
Okay, yeah.
But I've done presentations in English, and we have had subjects in English as well with Papidash, and most of the subjects that we had in English, I think that there were 3 or 4 subjects in English on total. One of them about regionalism, the other one about international relations theory. These were things that I most likely excelled, but they weren't being taken as very hard subjects to begin with, because all the things are sort of dumbed down to fit a medium level of English, you know.
Yeah, the language becomes a barrier, for you to elaborate on some topics, and it really puts you in a box of not knowing what to say because you want to. And also your research work is in Russian, right? What you're writing, you're translating it and then showing to your professor, right?
No, not really. No.
How it goes? Yeah.
Like, as of now, I write everything that I do in English, and I talked to my supervisor, Ekaterina Borisovna, also in English. We discuss everything in English, and so far all that I have written is in English. And if I will have to translate it just before the how to say that? How do they call it?
We call it defense.
Norma control, something like that.
The control.
Yeah. So like that's gonna be a challenge, yeah. But I am hoping that I won't have to. I think that if the text is in English, it isn't so meaningful. The important thing is that I will defend it in Russian, and that for whoever is there watching, it is something intelligible, right? So
you will be also defending your research in English.
No. The defense is going to be in Russian. It has to be.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
But you said you've been there, done that, so you shouldn't lack the courage. So, yeah, I hope you will do fine, because they allow a lot to foreign students, not only during the course of their studies, but also at the time when it comes to the time to defend their research. I hope they will give you the right attitude for you as a speaker on the floor. And going slowly to as we were going slowly to your research. Can you tell me also about your about a topic, what you found? Because sometimes when you talk to a student, whatever Russian or foreign, they might be researching something, but they not always finding actually some cool facts. But I think you found, because it's very interesting what you have in your computer here.
So like, well, I think it is appropriate to start with the title. The title of my research is Discourse in Non-Proliferation, the case of Donald Trump in the North Korean nuclear crisis. And basically what I do is a discourse analysis of Trump and some documents of his administration, his speeches, his tweets, in the context of the North Korean nuclear crisis. And like what I've decided to do overall was I tried my way to formulating two different hypotheses. One belongs to a realist thought and the other to a constructivist thought. One is sort of systemic, and the other one is more let's say microscopic, I would say. Like it deals with internal affairs, the constructivist one. And once I have these two hypotheses, I pen them out with the summarized context of the crisis, try to make a single hypothesis. It's like a mixed realist constructivist
very popular
thesis. And after that, I follow with what I would consider an empirical study, which is just a case study of all the materials that I have collected from Trump, analyzed on software, and like I explained the results of that case study. And on my third chapter, that's what I'm still working on, I discuss these results with my mixed hypothesis, and about what exactly my findings are. They are mostly not practical, I would say. At least so far I haven't been able to make an argument for any practical utility to my research, besides the methodological ones. So
okay,
I really think that there are a lot of things that we can do with this type of software analysis. And I understand that discursive turn or anything like that is not something new in international relations. In fact, it's something quite beaten. But well, my overarching goal is actually to apply Bourdieu's ontology to a study of the non-proliferation regime. So this maybe is going to be my PhD thesis.
Okay, yeah.
And like what I'm doing now is really like a tryout of different methods and
You're gaining experience.
yeah, like I'm trying to add up to that pool of knowledge that I will have to achieve in order to maybe start pulling it out a year from now, hopefully.
So it's not decisively what you will be putting into your PhD work, but just the experience that you gain from that work. You're going to follow through to your PhD. And you think about the Pierre Bourdieu theory and ontology. Do you think, how did you come to this thought? Is it really compatible with what we have in the IR studies? Is it very easy to make a research on his works? Well, I'm not really
of course
familiar with that.
So like there is something I don't know, considered mystical about or mythical.
Mythical, maybe. Yeah,
you can correct me on that. About Pierre Bourdieu, it's like I cannot really tell what exactly he wanted to say. There is this book that I borrowed from Ekaterina Borisovna a year and a half ago. And
you still reading it?
I am still reading it. Like I've read it once and twice, and I just think there is so much things that we could take advantage of for the study of international relations. There are a number of scholars, actually. Well, not a number, perhaps, but a select number, let's say, that have already started. I think it was, the first studies, maybe they began in 2010, and it has followed on, and they actually have a whole book full of articles on how to apply Bourdieu's ontology onto international relations study, because it's just something very rich. You see, he's not just another French philosopher. Like, I'm not putting him on a special place. I'm just saying that there is something significantly different in his ontology that differs from that of what was imported to international relations in the mid-80s or some beginning of 80s with postmodernism. And that is that he is trying to find a middle point between objectivity and subjectivity. There is, let's say it like that, not necessarily a division between it. And, to put it simply...
as it's possible. If it's possible.
It's not necessarily a matter of if it's possible or not to do such analysis or to actually understand whatever he was saying, because it's a very complicated book and it's written in complicated words and stuff. It's more about trying to understand what he wanted to do. And essentially, he was trying to solve conflicts. Conflicts that were generated by, language to begin with, and all the things that sort of derived from a structuralist approach, and how things are inherently divided. The moment that you give them a name, you are denoting something, and that something has two meanings.
Which is present right now, very popular with the post-truth.
So I would say that there is just a lot that we can learn about it. And these authors that I was talking about before, they already started applying Bourdieu's ontology. They treat about a number of subjects, but in their book, it doesn't have anything related to nuclear, to the nuclear regime or...
Nobler, NPT.
Anything. And I think that, I might not be the first to do that by the time I actually reach that point, but I think that this is legitimately something that should be tried. And I'm sort of decided on that already. And this is something that I will try to do.
You shouldn't necessarily be the first one, but I think the most contributive, actually. What's that? You got electricity there.
Yeah, I got a bit shocked
From the
by the
microphone.
microphone. Yeah.
I'll tell Paul about that. So, and maybe the last thing I would like to get a clear picture about is the matter how you make your research here. How different is the working this job of making a research in Russia compared to Brazil? Because I think you've made the research at the bachelor.
Mm-hmm.
I assume. So point out some differences and commonalities.
Well, I think it wouldn't be so fair to compare the way anybody does a bachelor research anywhere with the same analog to a master research, because these are very different things. But from what I know about how things happen in Brazil, and well, I don't know necessarily much. I can tell about a couple of universities, and that is just it is implied as a general rule by everybody that I know that has done a master's in Brazil. In Brazil, what happens is that usually to apply to your master's, you have to prepare a research project beforehand. And that research project has to be in terms with a certain teacher that works at that department, and it has to be like something that goes along with his area of research. So you are tailoring, from the beginning, you are tailoring your decisions and your research to fit a certain department to increase the chances that you are going to pass. Because even if you pass the exams and stuff, they have to know for sure that you won't have problems finding a supervisor. So that is first. And then after you actually start researching, what happens there is usually you won't really have freedom to choose your own theories and methods and like the problems that you will formulate. That is all sort of given from above by your supervisor, and you end up just doing research for somebody else and having like your way guided. You don't make your way into science or your goals of teaching or anything like that when you actually do your master's there. So it's in a certain way, it's a kind of indoctrination process. And I didn't really want that because I don't know, it's just not me really. And also
You want freedom.
Yeah, like I if somebody gives me something to read that I don't want to read, I'm not going to read. You know, like in Brazil, people who do masters, they are usually just the good students. They're not necessarily good thinkers or just like the brightest people. They are just very people that are full of rules and that are very disciplined.
Indoctrinated. Yeah.
They are responsible people and they're good people, good professionals, but they are not like capable of their own thoughts, I would say. Like for the most part, I would say.
So the kind of conformist, in a way.
Yeah, like I think that they just go and ride that wave until the point where okay, I'm the doctor now. I might as well have my own ideas, you know. And like by then you already probably forgot how to think.
Yeah,
you know.
You're in the system.
Yeah, so like that is the most starking difference between the system in Brazil and here in Russia. Since I have arrived, I've no problem really. Maybe because I'm a foreign student, so I was not pressured, and I ought not to be pressured until the end. But I had no how to say that. Nobody above me telling me, look, this is something that you have to do. This is your theme. This is what you have to read. All the choices have been made by me about both the subject and object of research and the methodology and all the readings, and everything that was recommended was actually very useful, like the book from Bourdieu that I just talked about. And like it wasn't, although it was not useful because I'm not using him for my master's, because I'm rather insecure about using him, so I'm trying to circumvent his thought, and like
But it's already
Yeah,
paving the way. For
yeah,
you.
exactly. So like although it wasn't useful immediately, it ended up really shaping my ways of thought to the point that I am actually decided on doing a PhD on that. So that and some general similarities between Brazil and Russia. I would say that most universities in Brazil are, well, what I can say is that what I have experienced it here, but I expect that this is not an isolated phenomena. Most universities in Brazil, much like I have experienced here, they are very interested in certain accreditation methods, and more than they are with perhaps the learning process.
Okay.
Let's put it like this. And this is one similarity. And another similarity that I notice is that sometimes there is an easy entry to higher levels of education, and because this is an option, people end up just doing it. Not because this is actually something that is part of their great plans in life, but because of, like, I don't know, pressure from their parents, or just because they might as well do. Well, it's there, you know. And there's just a general feeling of disinterest among students of all strata, I would say, like in Brazil, and this is something that I have noticed here as well. I don't really know if this is the case. You might know better, because it could also be that I'm just the language barrier has, like maybe
You
there are
haven't spoken.
too many blanks
Maybe,
in my Russian reading that have been filled by my own Brazilian idiosyncratic thought, but maybe not, right?
Wow. Because you have to every day live your life, like your daily life. You have to wake up and say, okay, I have this, that, and the other thing, and probably the other thing gonna add up to all that things, all the package that I'm having today. You really have to be an active person, and if you are, as well as you said, I think the learning process is sometimes just acquiring the diploma. Acquiring the paper. People just kind of wait for something to happen, and it shouldn't be really so. Whether you are studying the IT, or I don't know, economics, or politics, or whatever, sociology, I think you should have a clear goal in your mind for like at least 3 years. I'm not saying like a decade that you have to plan on, but I think you should have a real strong plan. And I'm very glad that you have one, and you have found one in Russia. And on that very, very positive note, encouraging note for everyone listening, I would like to conclude that you should actually crunch the granite of science, as we say in Russian. Do you understand that, right?
I don't actually. What is that?
Well, you kind of chomp on the granite. You should be like putting a tooth to the rock of science,
What the hell?
like that. So you kind of eat it, one day. And
I see.
chew it, and then maybe swallow, or I don't know. It's just a common phrase. It means "грызть гранит науки," like that. It's coming from the Soviet, but I think it's the greatest conclusion for this podcast, because it's been a great time talking to you, because it's not always that you find a person who's actually very interested in his studies or her studies. Been a great time. Have a great day. Great day to you, and I will conclude this session.
All right.
There.
Thank you, man.
Dropping mics. Dropping mics here. Okay, we put this machine to stop. 1, 2, 3, blam.